Hello, and welcome to a podcast by Indian cricket fans, one of the largest forums online specializing in Indian cricket. I'm Amay, one of the admins of ICF, and I'm joined by my fellow admin, Vivash. For this segment, we are having a very special guest, Mr. Simon Taufel, one of the leading lights of the ICC, who was a former umpire. Specifically, we will be discussing aspects of his book, which is a riveting read, Finding the Gaps, which focuses on his umpiring experience and the soft skills which he picked therein. So without much ado, welcome, Simon. It is absolutely fantastic to have you here with us. How are things at your end?
M.A. Vivash, great to be with you. Look, really nice to be connecting with a lot of cricket fans, in particular India cricket fans around the world. Look, things here in Australia are pretty good. We're quite lucky. We've just had the recent India-Australia Border Gavaskar trophy here, and what a magnificent test series that turned out to be. A great advertisement for test cricket. And look, any test series that finishes on the last day in the last hour with all three results still on the table has got to be a fantastic series. So what a great advertisement. And we're all still quite excited with the results as now you head into England, India.
Yeah, I mean, I'm based in the UK and it's on Channel 4. I'm sure that, it's been on free to air after nearly 15 years. People are talking about it. There's a buzz certainly there. So it's an exciting time, I would say, for cricket in general and Test cricket in particular. That's really good. Let's, I think, get into it. I read your book, and as I said, it's an absolutely amazing read. It opened my mind to various ways of thinking, which certainly does help me in preparing for my professional life. I think one aspect I can certainly relate to is, umpiring errors and stuff. And, as a lecturer myself, certainly, I do make errors while delivering a lecture in front of like 200 master's students, which can be quite intimidating. So I personally found this book to be quite a revelation in terms of how to mentally prepare myself. So based on that, I think the team at ICF has prepared certain questions, which we feel that, I feel cover the essence of the book in a way. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you some of them. Is that okay?
Fantastic. I really look forward to it. And I must say, I'm pleased to hear that at least there were a few concepts within the book that were able to be useful for you. And that's part of the reason why I wrote it, was around trying to share the transferable skills and soft skills that are involved in elite sport and how they might be able to help everyday people, mums and dads, middle managers, school teachers, bus drivers. It doesn't really matter. But, in particular, in this COVID environment that we're now having to learn to live with and learn to coexist with a pandemic, for me, it's really about what are those transferables and important skills from elite sport that we can apply right now that can help us to get unstuck, to find new ways, and to coexist with this virus that is incredibly challenging. And while it's not ideal, and it's certainly causing a lot of pain and suffering to a lot of different people in lots of different ways, how can we manage the best we can and still push through a lot of those challenges? And hopefully there's a lot of tips in that book that do just that.
Yeah, absolutely. That certainly does exactly what you say based on my experience reading it. So delving into some of the questions, you emphasize the importance of preparation and how it makes founding blocks of success. How would you draw upon that from your own experience?
Yeah, look, for me, preparation is king. It's really important to be prepared for when that opportunity comes along, because when that opportunity comes along, if you're not ready for it, it's too late. So whether that's a fitness objective, whether that's a knowledge perspective, and you being a lecturer and talking to university students all the time, that examination, that test that they're all preparing for to pass or not pass is exactly what I would do on a cricket field. That is my test. That is my type of examination, if you like. And I have to be sort of ready for a lot of those challenges that come along. So preparation is core and fundamental to that. And for me, world-class preparation is about dealing with the what-ifs and having the plan Bs. And as we sort of just touched on a few moments ago, there's a lot of uncertainty around COVID. There's a lot of uncertainty around living with the pandemic. So central to that preparation now is really those what-ifs and plan Bs, that there's a huge amount of uncertainty about, well, we've all got this thing called a diary and a yearly planner and things that we'd like to do, and borders open and close, and we go into lockdown and then we come open again. And there's a lot of uncertainty as to whether things will happen the way that they do. I now do my annual planner and diary in pencil, so I can rub out and change things and try to be really flexible. So I think today, in today's environment with preparation, we do need to have a strong element of being flexible rather than locked into a particular preparation routine. And that just means that we've got to focus on the what ifs. What if I can't go to that appointment next week? What if there is a lockdown tomorrow? And look at how adaptable we are with our preparation, and particularly with technology. How can we use technology now to support different mediums and different ways of still achieving what we've got to do and to keep moving forward? So I think there's a high degree of variety that's required. My preparations were really strong and really fixed, and what I found that I was very checklist driven with my preparation routines. What I found is that there is a danger in that you can just tick a box and say, I've done that, I've read that, I've double checked this, I've packed that, etc., etc. And if you're just ticking a box with your preparation, there is a real danger that you're not actually preparing with true application and focus, that you're just ticking a box and going through the motions. So it's really important to prepare with variety and add some new elements to that, and to really, as I said, focus on those what-ifs and plan Bs.
Ah, that is a very that does sound like a plan that, even, I would use certainly. Wow. Thank you for that answer. It was quite illuminating. So moving on, you highlight the need for individuals to get comfortable at being uncomfortable as well as being open-minded. Obviously, what can we do, say, in a real world scenario? You have come across people, often we're asked to work in teams in a lot of tasks we do. So yeah. What do you do if you come across somebody, for example, who is very inflexible and rigid in their ways of thinking? And, this can be anywhere. There's probably a generation gap with my own parents, for example. How would you go about,
Yeah, it's a real challenging one, Amay. It's about, people are different. And one thing that the Lahore experience taught me that I wrote about in the book was that we can have the same situation, but look at it completely differently and both be right. And, sometimes there isn't a right or wrong, there's just different. And people, one thing that we have to accept, and I'm still struggling with this concept today myself, is that not everyone's like you and me, that 75% of the world are different to us. And that doesn't make it right or wrong. That just makes it individual and unique. And we have to accept that people won't often see things the same way we do. And that diversity, while on the surface might seem a problem, is probably actually quite a good thing. And having worked in the elite umpiring team for so long, with different age groups in my team, with different religions in my team, with different socioeconomic backgrounds and different demographics, it really is a case of embracing that diversity and using it to its potential. And when I say that, it's about using the collective intelligence in the room, because when we do sit in a team environment, and if you sit in your lecture theatre, you've got so much information sitting in that room that we need to try and harness, rather than just say my version of this is right. And you should do what I say that you need to do because I'm right and you're wrong. And that's once you set that position up, you're almost blocking yourself to potential opportunities of how can we use that collective intelligence to come up with something even better. So I think when we talk about attitude, when we talk about getting uncomfortable, it's about challenging yourself, first of all, and having that open mind to listen. Listening is a really important communication skill that doesn't get enough airtime. And so I think it's really important that, number one, that we just have the first view ourselves that we're not always right, that perhaps there is a better answer out there, perhaps there is a better solution. And once you have that position of being open-minded and being prepared to listen to your teammates and colleagues, then you actually open the door to opportunity about what you can learn and what other people might know, or how they can build upon your idea, or how you can add value to what they have to say. So effective listening and opening your mind to possibilities is an attitude that takes time to develop and takes a lot of practice. And that's why it's important that when you are a team environment, and from a personality perspective, we see this with very dominant people, that they do most of the talking in the group and most of the talking in the room. Once you realize and have that self-awareness, and that self-awareness is a huge topic all on its own, then you can start to leverage off that collective intelligence in the room. And the last thing I'd say about getting uncomfortable with challenging yourself is always look for ways to try new things. And as a parent, we always try to get our kids to try new foods. Don't knock it until you try it. Don't tell me you don't like what's on your plate until you actually try it. And I think the same goes for us as mature adults, is that sometimes we close ourselves off to invitations, opportunities, because we're afraid to try new things, that something bad might happen. Well, guess what? Something bad may not happen, and it might actually be a good thing. So I really would encourage people to keep going outside of their comfort zone and keep stretching themselves. And it's like a muscle. Once you keep stretching that muscle, it actually will go further. It'll get stronger. It'll become more flexible. It'll become more dynamic. And so it's really important that we embrace that concept of just continuing to try new things. And, if we didn't try T20 cricket, we wouldn't be where we are today. If IPL didn't try to get their competition up and running 11 years ago, then we wouldn't be in this position of having a great concept like that. So it's really important to try new things. And then if it doesn't work, well, that's okay, we've tried it. But not to try is almost, if not worse, than sitting back and doing nothing.
Yeah, I can't really disagree. That's a very profound insight. Thank you very much for that answer, Simon. Moving on, as we have to. There is a certain, I think most of us are very much aware that, being positive obviously gets us the best results. But, you look around me and, especially in the university environment, there's a lot of issues with mental health. So maintaining a positive attitude it's something which is probably really good on paper, but when you go to implement it in real life, it is very difficult. It's one of those cliches. So how do you maintain a positive attitude over, periods of times, obviously in your life, you go through ups and downs. So, how do you maintain that level of positivity when, say, something like COVID or whatever, as you cooped up in the house, obviously, I go through periods where I'm like, nothing good is going to happen in life. So how do you get over that hump?
Yeah, look, it's a real life problem, no question about that. And as I touched on at the start of this discussion, now is the time to be using all of our skills and tools and abilities from elite sport in this space. And, yes, a lot of people are going through periods of anxiety, depression, frustration, tremendous loss, whether that's personal loss with families and loved ones, or they're going through loss in terms of livelihoods and income and opportunities. There's no question that a lot of people are going through pain. But on the flip side, a lot of people are actually thriving in this environment. And we could do a whole session on this, to be quite honest, but I'll give you a couple of ideas and a couple of concepts. Your attitude and your response to whatever's in front of you is a choice. And I think it's really important to realize that we do have the power of choice. We can choose to respond in a very hostile, negative way to what's in front of us, or we can choose some acceptance. And that's a really important concept to start with, is that we can't change what's happening in front of us. There is an element here of uncontrollables. So if I look at, give you a cricket example, the 2015 World Cup was played in Australia and New Zealand, and you had matches between Perth and Auckland. Now, that's longer than the width of India in terms of distance. And some teams, not all, some teams had to travel from Perth to Auckland or vice versa to play matches. Now, the schedule is the schedule. The draw is the draw. There is nothing that you can do to control what matches you are given by the governing body and when. So you just have to find a way. You can choose how to respond. You can choose that that's a problem and an obstacle and a roadblock, or you can choose, okay, well, that's a great challenge. What can we do within our control to effectively manage and deal with those challenges and do the best we can and actually use it to our advantage? So the first concept I'd love people to connect with is they have a choice in how to respond. And obviously the preference would be, well, look, accept, acknowledge, and then decide what to do next that is within their control. The second thing I'd get people to really think about is the fact that it's okay. We are human. And just like in cricket, form is temporary, but class is permanent. So it's okay to have a few down days. It's okay to have a bad week. In my space, while it doesn't feel like it at the time, it's okay to have a bad day at the office. It's going to happen. Life and cricket are not always going to be a bed of roses. They're not always going to be wonderful things that happen. India's not going to win every game. Let's be realistic. It's not going to happen that way. And so life is not always going to be everything we want it to be. So there is an element here of it's okay to be depressed for a day. It's okay to go through a rough patch. But what is important to realize on the flip side is that you are a class individual. You are a good person. You can persevere. You can find a way. And you can deal with what's in front of you. It can be very hard if you try to do that on your own. So when you look at the lessons of elite sport, we have a lot of coaches and a lot of people that we can draw strength and information and resources from. And so I'd really encourage people that you don't have to go through these moments or these experiences on your own, that you can reach out to the people in your network, the people in your team, the people in your family to help get through, and you will get through. Human beings are intrinsically quite resilient and we do find a way. It's just that we put a lot of expectation upon ourselves that it has to happen a certain way or it has to look a certain way. But that's not sport and that's not life. It does rain in cricket matches. Matches do get interrupted. Light towers do go down. Fans do get upset. People do make silly comments. Players do act up. And while that's never pleasant, we just have to find a way through it and draw from our experience and draw from the collective intelligence that we spoke about before, from our teammates, and push through, keep going, because the alternative's not great.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with that. You basically summed it up.
You can if you like.
I mean, yeah, but it's very hard not to. I mean, as somebody who goes through, academic publishing can be a very brutal process. Yeah. One of my supervisors had a paper rejected 15 times before he got it published, and what you said is certainly very applicable to me as well, because you do get down, you put in all that work, and then you get rejected because some people just don't like the type of work you do. So,
and it's hard. It's hard. It's not meant to be easy, but, nothing that's worthwhile, whether it's a personal pursuit or a professional pursuit, nothing worthwhile is ever easy. There's always going to be tough moments along the way. There's always going to be roadblocks. There's always going to be disappointments. There's always going to be rejections. And at the time, they really hurt. They're tough. And you can get locked in that moment. And the work that I do with people, individuals, with corporates, with clients, is about helping people get unstuck and getting them through to that other side as quickly as possible. And that's where those moments from elite sport are really, really helpful. And I've tried to give you a couple of tips and tools around how do we get unstuck and how can we draw upon resources within our network that might just do that. So sometimes it's very hard for us to see the opportunity or to get unstuck. And that's where you just need someone to either put their arm around you and really support you, or in some cases, give you a bit of a kick up the backside and say, come on, you're better than this. Let's get through this together.
I can't disagree with that. I think hopefully my wife plays that role with me. Moving on. I noticed that, especially in the world of cricket, a lot of term which I hear a lot is being coachable is a necessary trait. But on the flip side of that, you do require a good coach as well to bring out the best in you. So, what are some of the qualities you would look at in identifying a coach, a mentor, a guru?
Yeah, look, it's a fascinating area. Look, the first thing I'd say is that I think that everyone should have a coach. I think everyone needs a resource. Everyone needs someone to be that person to either help push them outside of their comfort zone, or to be that pillar of support, or to be that pillar of challenge, depending upon your needs at the time. So the first thing I'd say is that everyone should have a coach. And I still have two coaches that I still use today in various ways. But when I was at the peak of my career, I had a financial coach, I had a fitness coach, I had a nutritionalist coach, I had a umpire coach, and I had a life coach. And I've still got some of those people, if not most of them, in my network today. But as my career has shifted, my coaching needs have changed. And so with that, the people that I draw upon as coaches have changed also. But what does a coach do and why are they important? Well, for me, the coach should not necessarily be the font of all knowledge. For me, the coach is like a general practitioner. They're like your doctor that you go to. They have a lot of general knowledge, but they're not a specialist. But they should try to refer you to a specialist depending upon what your needs and opportunities might be. And that's really important, because if you're using a coach and they're telling you that they know everything, that's a bit of a red flag. And I don't know it all, but I would certainly be hopefully in a position where I would know someone who might be in a better position to help, advise, or to be a resource that they could tap into. And that's really important. So for me, the good coach is like a GP, a general practitioner, a doctor who refers you to specialists. There's someone that should ask you good questions. There's someone that should help you self-discover. And you're in the space of education. So education is all about drawing out. It's not about necessarily, telling people what to do. And we have to equip people in our network who can problem solve for themselves and find their own solutions because intrinsically, I reckon we've got the solutions to all of our problems, but sometimes we need some additional information to help us either see that or just make that leap of faith. And so that's where the coach really does come in. And as I said before, they can be very supportive and, maybe hold your hand through some difficult periods or some opportunities, or they can be quite ruthless and quite strong and really give you that kick up the backside and push that you need to go that extra mile. And I think that's really important. But in terms of what you should be looking for in a coach, the coach should really care about you. That has to be fundamental. They need to care about you and care about what happens to you. And they should also have a philosophy around accountability with what the relationship looks like. And what is their philosophy about what you expect from them and what they expect from you. And if you don't have that understanding and care factor up front, the relationship is going to be somewhat doomed. And if you don't have that philosophy of joint accountability about who does what and when, then you're going to become pretty frustrated. Mentorship is a completely different topic and a completely different relationship. We can spend quite a bit of time on that. But I think my main message would be to the people listening to this is that if you don't have a coach now, find one. Think about those elements of coaching that I've talked about, and think about that it's pretty unusual for one team to have the same coach throughout their journey. And as the team grows, the coaching needs change, and therefore the coaching resource needs to shift with that as well. And that's okay. And that's okay. And that's why you see a lot of teams go through a lot of coaches, and that's all right. And we see a lot of coaches change different teams, and that's okay too. I hope that makes sense.
No, truer words have never been spoken. I think I completely agree with you. I mean, I support Chelsea FC. We've got a new coach in. So I think that philosophy is certainly something we can all agree with. Moving on, it would be amiss of me not to ask you mention an anecdote related to the Super Bowl, considering that the Super Bowl is this weekend. Legendary American Green Bay Packers football coach Vincent Lombardi has said that perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. What are your views on this matter? Do you adhere to that line of thinking, or would you say that, do you disagree with what has been said?
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. And just before I answer that, I am a bit of a fan of Vince Lombardi as a coach and as a participant in sport. And I really connect with the fact that when he said, if you're not 10 minutes early for a meeting, you're late. So that's another element of preparation we didn't touch on before, but I really value people's time, and it's really important to be on time. So that's a quote that's always stuck with me, and it's one that I continue to live with. But look, in my book, I talk about perfectionism versus excellence. My DNA, unfortunately, is I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I tend to be quite specific. I tend to be quite analytical. I tend to be quite process-driven. And I can tell you quite frankly that when I started my umpiring career, I didn't think I'd make a mistake. I thought I was bulletproof, young. I'd played with umpires who had difficulty in hearing and seeing, were quite old. I thought I could do a better job, and I wouldn't make a mistake. Well, how wrong was I? And even going through school, I had teachers who would pick me up and say, look, it's going to hurt you when you judge other people by your standards. That's not a good recipe for building good relationships and accepting differences in other people, etc., that I've already spoken about. So my main message around perfection is, having learnt it the hard way that yes, I do make lots of mistakes, is that when you try to chase perfectionism, you do set yourself up for failure. And so to Vince's quote, I'm a bit skeptical around chasing perfection to get excellence, because if you chase perfection, you are setting yourself up for failure, in my view, because you'll never achieve perfection. And we get that, and I think we understand that. But what that does is it sets up your mentality where if you ever fall short of perfection, you're never satisfied, you're not happy, and you don't feel as though that you're making progress. And I think that's a really dangerous position, because it takes off the table that element of being rational, that mistakes are part of learning. And as an educator, you know that if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. And as a cricket umpire, mistakes are part of the game. Our game is just full of mistakes. But I learned a lot from, I got John Eales from rugby union, former Wallabies captain in rugby union, to come and talk to our umpires and referees just before the 2015 World Cup. And he said something to us about the best referees in the world in rugby union that still sticks with me today. And the best referees, the best officials in the world, have earned the right to get it wrong. So the best in the world have earned the right to get it wrong. What does that mean? It means that through performance, we build up credibility. We build up something called professional insurance that allows us that element of forgiveness to make the odd mistake, that the players will forgive the odd mistake. When you are a perfectionist, you don't forgive your mistakes. And that's a really dangerous position to go into, because forgiveness is really important for yourself, because if you're putting so much effort and pressure on yourself never to make a mistake, number one, you're never going to learn anything. But number two, you're going to be so dirty and filthy with yourself that you can continue to beat yourself up every time something doesn't go right. And so you're never going to be happy or satisfied. And that's going to affect not only you, but also the people around you. So we could talk about perfection. We could talk about the tools for a long time, and we could try to shift people away from that element of perfection. But I hope I've given you a taste and a flavour about why excellence is the position of being the right journey, and why perfectionism as a destination can be really dangerous.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the next question probably builds on this one as well. For example, we saw in the... Beg your pardon, Vivek?
Yeah. So I want to add something here. So yeah. So we often make mistakes. That is bound to happen. And maybe as we grow professionally, so we understand and we realize that, okay, it's okay to make those mistakes. But one thing is that when we are making that mistake, we have realized that, but somewhere in back of mind that still goes on. So how do we regain our focus to things which we are trying to achieve?
Yeah, it's a fascinating area. And look, I really understand and appreciate the Indian culture, particularly because I've spent so much time working with Indian corporates, working with Indian umpires and working with Indian sport, is that when you make a mistake, is that the first thing that happens is you get this emotion of embarrassment, this sense of failure, this sense of letting the team down or being insecure about what's going to happen next and what other people are going to think. So the main piece of advice that I'd be looking at in sharing with this audience would be, is how do we turn the emotional response into a rational one and not deal with the issues of embarrassment, anxiety, what might happen later on, what are the consequences, and try to look at it rationally and say, okay, so I've made a mistake. What do I learn from that? What can I take away? And ask yourself the question, if I had to do this over again, what would I do differently? And really embrace the learning opportunity rather than wallow in that emotion of fear, anxiety, self-pity, admonishment, etc. And stay connected with the moment, because when we make a mistake, our mind immediately goes to thinking about the future. What are the outcomes? What are the implications? What are the other people going to say? What are they going to think? How's this going to affect my career? What's this going to do to what I do next? And when you're thinking about the future, you've lost that connection with the moment. And as a cricket umpire, you can't do that. You've got to then refocus, or a batsman, you've got to focus on the next ball. So you can't disconnect with the moment. So what I would encourage people to do is to really practice these sorts of things, because I think, as was set up front in this discussion, we make mistakes every day. There's a chance we'll make a mistake in this podcast. There's a chance that we'll make a mistake at some point in what we do later on today. And I guarantee you it will happen, no question. So what we've got to do is practice those questions. Okay, so what did I learn from this? Don't let your first response be, oh, you idiot, why did you do that? Or what's such and such going to say? Your first response, if you can keep training yourself and keep practicing your first response to be a rational one, oh, gee, that wasn't very good. Well, what did I learn there? Or if I did that again, how might I do that differently? How can I avoid that mistake happening again? Or how can I share that information with someone else and make sure that they don't make the same mistake that I've made? You know, so many more learned people before me have said, we don't have time to make all the mistakes ourselves. So what can we learn from other people? And that's where sport is really good, where we've got the video, we've got the libraries, we've got the resources, we've got the networks to share our mistakes. But the question is, do we have the courage to forgive when we make a mistake, forgive ourselves, and turn that emotion into a rational response?
I have your book with me, Finding the Gaps. So yeah, so I read one of the chapter where it says about how difficult is it to switch between different types of focus which you require as an umpire, or even say other sportsmen require in this. Say we have you had mentioned about wicket keepers, batsmen, and all those players have to really. It's not just switching on and off and just moving back and forth. Just it was really about switching, maintaining the focus in different ways, basically calibrating it accordingly.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Look, it's a common question, Vibash, that people ask me, how do you concentrate for 5 days in a test match?
Yeah.
Well, the short answer is you don't. So all I have to do, and in the book, there's a chapter about why focus beats concentration. And it's about focusing on the right things at the right time. You don't concentrate for 7 hours a day. You don't concentrate for 2,700 balls in the match. You break it down into bite-sized chunks. And that's why when I work with corporates, when I work with individuals, it's about what do we want to focus on at the right time, and what does that look like in what you do as opposed to what I do. But I use the routines, and I use the sports routines that I've developed to help people identify the cues. You know, so what do we look for in what we do, and how do we recognise that that's going to be a full pitch ball, that's going to be a short ball, because a batsman only has roughly half a second to make a decision. Do they go forwards? Do they go backwards? Do they play a defensive shot? Do they play an attacking shot? And they've got less than half a second to decide all that, and then be ready for when that ball actually gets to them. As a cricket umpire, when I see a ball go down, I can't see back foot, front foot, follow through, ball pitching, ball impact, where was it going, what did it do, what were the players doing, where was the keeper going. I can't watch all of that at the same time. So I've got to choose what I'm going to watch, and I've got to try and watch the right things at the right time. And I do a session with a lot of sports officials called "Don't watch the ball, watch the play." And if we looked at that in a learning environment or a school environment or a work environment, watching the play is something that you can define, but are you too narrow in your focus, or are you too broad in your focus and not watching the right things at the right time? And as I said before, are we staying connected with the moment? Because studies have shown that we only spend around 70% of our think time actually connected in the moment. So I try and help people not spend too much time thinking about the past, not trying to spend too much time thinking about the future, staying connected with the moment and watching the right things at the right time.
Okay. So moving forward on that line only, so which match or say which moment do you consider as one of the toughest in terms of say maintaining this focus and as well as switching that?
Every ball that gets bowled is a very danger moment. Look, in the world of umpiring, we have lots of danger moments, but obviously the first ball is normally a danger moment because we don't sort of feel routine based, we don't feel relaxed, we don't feel comfortable, so it might take a bit of time to get comfortable. So normally the first ball of an over is a high danger period. Just like players and batsmen, the first ball after drinks is definitely a danger period, or the first over after an interruption, or if there's been a long break in play. Sometimes you can just not be ready for what's about to happen. But really, there are lots of danger moments on the field of play and lots of areas that potentially are difficult. And I always say to my colleagues, we are only ever one ball away from disaster. Most of my mistakes, when I did some data analysis on when I made mistakes and I did a trends error analysis on my errors, most of my mistakes as a trend happened on day 5. I found that interesting. And together with my coach, we worked out, long story short, we worked out that perhaps I was switching off and actually my mind was on the plane or my mind was on the bus going to the next match or going home, rather than actually seeing the match out through and what we would say run through the finish line, where I wasn't really connected with that moment. You know, I didn't apply myself on day 5 with the same level of intensity and purpose and focus that I did on day 1. And so that mental fatigue, if you like, was the issue that I had to address. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, whatever has been written in the book, I was able to relate to the scenario that we face in day-to-day life. I was able to relate those problems, but maybe I have better understanding of what can be tried, what can I improve on, and what exactly should I look forward to if I'm in that type of situation.
Yeah, look, that's great to hear, Vibash, but don't forget to, don't try to change your game in a big way. Try to look at small adjustments that are manageable, and that you don't try and change too many things at the same time, because then you will lose track of where you're up to, and you'll probably lose confidence, and you might be after instant success. And instant success doesn't happen. You know, there's a lot of self-discipline that I talk about and that I work through with people, and there's a lot of patience required. So don't be in a rush to get somewhere, and just make small improvements day by day.
Okay. So okay. So at times, what happens that when we are trying to do something, if we are, say, if we are thinking too much about it, we do tend to get nervous. So in those types of scenario, how do we overcome with our nervousness, anxiety, or any problems that we are facing initially?
Yeah, look, this is a very human quality. You know, people will go through these sorts of emotions and thoughts all the time. And, you know, this is where I work with people around developing some mental toughness and some mental strength. And it's the ability, for me, it's the ability to control your thoughts and emotions rather than let them control you. And fear and pressure and anxiety, if uncontrolled, will control you. And so I use that education example where if you are studying for a big test and you are worried and overly nervous about the questions and about your ability to answer the questions, then you are not going to be able to think clearly. And it's the same for me, that if I have too many nerves before a game, and as I walk out there and I'm worried about making a mistake, if I'm driven by fear, if I'm worried about what the commentators are going to say, if I'm worried about what the reporters are going to write the next day, then guess what's going to happen? Chances are I'm going to do just that, because I'm not connected with the moment. I'm not focusing on my role. I'm not answering the question. So the typical response that I would give to someone who's overly nervous about the exam is some reassurance. Have you put in the work? Yes, I've put in the work. Have you studied well? Yes, I've studied well. Are you ready and prepared? I think so. Well, all you have to do is to breathe, relax, answer the question, and move on to the next one. And if you have some time left over at the end of the exam, double check some of your answers and make sure that you haven't made any silly mistakes. That's all you have to do. So when I go out to umpire, I have to realize that if I'm getting too many nerves, all I've got to do is breathe, relax, reaffirm to myself that I'm ready, I've put in the work, I'm prepared, watch the ball, let the decision come to you, and make a decision, and then move on to the next ball. And so it's about, nerves are good. Nerves are healthy. They do show that you care, but too many nerves are bad. And so again, how do we flip that emotional response to one of a rational one? And sometimes we need a bit of support and reassurance from people in our network that that's okay. We can get through this. And if you work in teams, that's a good thing, because hopefully your partners or your colleagues will see that you are too nervous, you're not focused, you're distracted, you're not in the space, you're not thinking and connected with the moment. So break it down into simple things. It's okay, I've put in the work, I'm ready. I can do this. And so I have 3 statements before I go out to umpire every session. I am, I will, and I can. I am a good umpire. I will umpire well. I can umpire well. And it's really important to draw upon that and relax and breathe and stay connected with the moment and just watch the ball. Simple. But we've got to keep practicing it. We've got to keep thinking those routines.
I will definitely try to keep those three terms in my mind when I'm actually trying to do something. And,
I will, and I am.
And one takeaway from your answer is that we can always take nervousness as in the positive light, where so like you said that nerves so that we actually care about it. So
Yeah.
when I think about it, say maybe when if I'm actually nervous about all those things which say if something is something big is coming for me, or something is really important for me, then in that case we are normally nervous. If we don't,
Well, I'm sure, Vibash, you're probably nervous before this podcast, before this interview, and that's okay. But when it prevents you from being yourself, when it prevents you from performing the way that you want to perform, that's not good. So just relax, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what's the worst thing that's going to happen here? You know, this is not a life and death interview. It should be fun. It should be informative. It should be relaxed. And we should be able to have a laugh or two along the way. So just relax, be yourself, ask the questions you want to ask, and it'll be all right.
Sure.
Tiga?
Yeah.
Anything else, Vibash?
No, I think Amma has next question.
All right, okay. And wrapping up this interview, I think this is the final one. Thank you, Simon, for putting up with us through this process. Reading your book, you mentioned something called buying time and not responding immediately. From an umpiring context in cricket, some of these new umpires, and I'm watching sometimes, for example, the local Indian Ranji leagues as well. They don't have the same reputation as yourself. So they are put under tremendous amounts of pressure by players. And so what piece of advice would you have to give the new generation of umpires who probably say are making their debut in an Ashes series or even an India-Pakistan World Cup game, where the stakes are very high, everything is microanalyzed, and you're questioned for every decision. I sit next to my father while watching some of the India-Pakistan games, and one wrong decision, be it a leg bye or anything else, is microanalyzed, and the umpire, whether you like it or not, gets it. So how would you? What piece of advice would you give to these young and upcoming generation of umpires?
Well, Amay, you've painted a very interesting picture there of doom and gloom and perhaps negativity around perceived pressure and importance of the matches, etc. And look, every game of cricket's important. Whether I umpired a 2020 match a couple of days ago with some new women's teams here on the Southern Highlands in New South Wales. The first time we'd put a female competition together in our local area. That was their test match. It wasn't my test match, but it was their test match. And every game is important. And we've seen in this COVID environment where local test matches are being officiated by new test umpires making their debuts because the elite panel are not travelling in general. And we've probably seen maybe 6 debutantes, and I think we've got a couple happening in this series with India and England. And that's a good thing, but it's just another game of cricket. From an umpire's perspective, every game is someone's test match, but every game is just a game. And these new test umpires, while it's an important occasion for them, the advice that I'd be working through with them would be, okay, this is just another game of cricket for you. How many games have you done? Oh, a couple of hundred. Well, this is just an extra one. Yes, other people might put some more importance on it from an outside perspective. It might be part of an Ashes or a India-Pakistan iconic series, or a Australia-India Port Gavaskar Trophy match. but it's just another game of cricket. So why do you need to go and do things differently? You know, the selectors have appointed you because they've obviously got belief and faith that you can umpire the game. So just go and do that. Umpire the game to the best of your ability. So how do we ignore all of those outside influences, all of those outside distractions, stick true to our processes, stick true to our preparation routines, work really hard, do the right things that we've been doing up until this point that have created this opportunity for us, and just do it. And don't think about all that other stuff. Don't overcomplicate the game. Don't get into spaces that are going to make the game harder than it needs to be. And think less and do more. So don't change the routines. Don't change. You might have to make some small adjustments. But intrinsically, be yourself, trust in your game, and just umpire the game of cricket. And then you create that opportunity of doing the best you can. Now, it may not actually turn out that way, but you give yourself the best opportunity. If you go into that match worried about the broadcasters, worried about the media, worried about the status of the game, worried about stuffing up, then you are setting yourself up for something bad to happen. And you're starting from a position of behind rather than starting from a good base. So in sport, in business, in whatever work that you do, it's about giving yourself that high percentage possible outcome. There are no guarantees. But what we want to do is give ourselves the best percentage possibility of achieving what we want to achieve. And if we buy some time in critical moments, we don't have to respond instantly. It's like when you get that examination paper in front of you and you've got the list of questions, you don't have to answer the first question in the first 5 minutes. You don't even have to answer the first question itself. You can go on to question number 2. If you're not comfortable answering question number 1, you can think about that while you answer question number 2. Or you could start at question number 20 if you wanted to. You can buy some time. You're in control of how you respond. And it's really important to consider your options before you dive deep into making a decision. Because once you make the decision, it's really hard to change. So it's really important to buy some time, think about it, maybe consult with some other people, like a partner or a colleague or a teammate. Use that collective intelligence in the room, and then come forward with a response. And hopefully it's going to be a more considered response based on what outcome do we want? What's the best way to get the outcome we're looking for? And hopefully that's a bit of a taste around answering that question.
I mean, these are certainly words we can all live by. Thank you very much for all these detailed answers. I think we're approaching the end of our interview, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank Simon for his precious time. And, you know, it's been such a learning experience for me, even listening to you. And thank you very much, sir.
Dhanyawad, shukriya.
And before I wrap up, I would also like to thank fellow ICF admins, Aquian and Udit, who did help in just preparing some of the questions we would want to ask Mr. Simon Taufel. And hopefully, if you're watching this and you've learned or you want to learn more from what Simon is telling, I'm sure that you have certain tailor-made experiences for individuals and corporate entities.
Always happy to talk and always happy to help people get unstuck. Thanks for the opportunity.
No problem at all. Thank you very much. And with that, we will end this interview. Namaste. And
Namaste. Virmalenge.
Virmalenge indeed. Thank you very much.